Hey everyone, welcome back to Satanix Reviews. Today, I'm reviewing an anime for once. However, this anime review is for a very special reason. I'm making this video in memory of a certain creator, Akira Toriyama. Toriyama was the main creator of the Dragon Ball franchise and an artist for games such as Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger. Out of all of these, though, Dragon Ball was truly his magnum opus. Now, you might think I'm referring to Dragon Ball as a whole, or even Dragon Ball Z, but many forget that the original Dragon Ball is where it all started, and it was much different in themes and ideas than Z, GT, and Super. Toriyama wanted to make his own version of the story Journey to the West. After doing research, I did notice some similarities, but this is still its own thing. With that said, I do feel like the series does at least try to have similar themes. For example, a lot of Goku's teachings can be seen as very similar to Wukong's teachings. He learns the importance of self control and inner balance. That can be seen as sort of a religious belief, even if it's not the same as Wukong's path to enlightenment. Even the name Son Goku is very similar to Sun Wukong, with Goku looking almost like a reverse of the name Wukong. Also, the Dragon Balls are essentially similar to the ancient artifacts that the main characters of Journey to the West were after. Both the manga and anime versions also showcase the tale's sense of humor, but I admit Dragon Ball's comedy is still very Japanese, which I'll discuss later. Anyway, that's enough comparing and contrasting, because we're just reviewing the original Dragon Ball as its own creation. The story is about a young boy with a tail named Goku, who lives by himself in the middle of nowhere ever since his grandfather passed away, until a young teenage girl named Bulma stumbles across him. This moment where she meets up with Goku is so iconic, because this is where the whole franchise began. A girl coming across a boy with a setup of the franchise's entire lore. She explains that Goku has a Dragon Ball, and that there are six more on the planet. When all seven are gathered, the magic dragon Shenron grants the wish of whoever summons him. The first saga alone promises so many possibilities on what could be done with the existence of these Dragon Balls. It gives the show a timeless feel, making it about the adventure rather than the action. Shockingly, the fights during the first saga are so short. People probably think this is going to be like Dragon Ball Z, where all the fights take 5 to 10 episodes, but sometimes the fights only last a couple of seconds. Goku is already strong due to the teachings of his grandfather Gohan. This first saga gives you a good idea on how the entire show is like, but I admit it might not be for everyone. There is a ton of fan service and even some moments of raunchy humor. The scene where Goku removes Bulma's underwear to see what's underneath was so shocking to me as a 12-year-old. I had to ask myself, is this really Dragon Ball? I had never seen this type of adult humor in any animated show. This was before I had watched shows like The Simpsons or South Park, so this was such a surprise. This isn't even a one off joke. This is a major plot point, and it's how they get one of the Dragon Balls. This was my introduction to fan service in anime. In fact, a lot of these early sagas are insanely over the top with it. There's one character whose only purpose is fan service during the second saga. During her fight, she out of nowhere strips down to her underwear just to fluster her opponent. If there's anyone that was originally made for purely fan service, though, it's Bulma. She gets subjected to adult humor more than any other female character I've ever seen in the entire franchise. Between all her panty shots, the way she's drawn and animated half the time, and for about 4 to 5 episodes, she has to wear a bunny outfit. Of course, this anime not only has the fan service trope, but also the perverted old man trope. Master Roshi is easily among the most perverted characters in all of anime, and he absolutely has no shame in it whatsoever. This also was my introduction to the infamous nosebleed trope in anime, where a character's nose gushes with blood when they see something so lewd. Apparently, this has something to do with how the blood is rushing and the heart rate increases from the excitement, but it's clearly not something that happens in real life. It's just a comedic effect, and it's usually done during fan service moments. I understand that anime fans are really getting tired of fan service, but I personally don't mind it because, well, let me give my perspective of it. Fan service can honestly be a way of coming across personality. I'm not saying you have to agree on that, but if some of these characters didn't have any fan service to them, they wouldn't be seen as all that unique in comparison. Again, some might disagree, but take into consideration that scene I mentioned where that woman made her opponent flustered. She's willing to do whatever she can to win the battle by any means necessary, and she has complete confidence that she'll win with that strategy. Had they not included this addition, she'd just be seen as a generic flirt or beauty. Oddly enough, this was kept in the Blue Water dub, which was a censored Canadian dub that admittedly is kind of lame. The voices just don't sound good, so just stick with the Funimation dub. It also doesn't help that the Blue Water dub omits quite a few moments. Was this just their attempt at being more kid-friendly or family-friendly? Dragon Ball isn't a kids show and it never was meant to be. I understand people who want a Dragon Ball show without these fan service moments distracting from the plot, but I find it very entertaining. It was a pretty big influence on my style of comedy because of how common and out of nowhere lewd it can get. Dragon Ball at heart is truly a comedy with a sense of adventure. At the center of it is Goku himself. If you want to know one of my main inspirations for my mindset, watch Kid Goku in this show. He's so oblivious to the world around him because he's such an outsider who knows nothing about the real world his friends live in. All he knows is what he enjoys, fighting and eating. He's very airheaded and doesn't care about what people say about him. However, you don't want to screw with him. Not only can he kick your ass, he'll hunt you down if you kill or hurt one of his friends. During the King Piccolo saga, we see his rage for the first time. This is when he became aware that there are some people that must be defeated. But before this saga, he was given the idea that most of his opponents can be redeemed. There are exceptions such as Master Roshi's rival, Master Shen, and the entire Red Ribbon Army. But with characters like Oolong, Yamcha, and Tien, Goku ends up seeing the good in them, even if it sometimes takes a while. With that said, it's pretty refreshing to see an anime series where these types of characters get their redemption rather quickly. In a lot of other anime shows, I really have to wait for characters to be redeemed, but this show makes these characters so likable. Even Roshi is a worthy master for Goku. In one of my favorite moments in the show, all of Roshi's students are made fun of for still wearing the same uniforms as they had before, despite the fact that Roshi doesn't train them anymore at this point. They state how it's to honor his teachings. If this were any other series, I'd consider this cliched, but when they say they respect him, I believe it because we see how his teachings shaped characters like Goku and Krillin. To describe what Dragon Ball is, I'd say it's half comedy, half adventure. The last third of the series becomes less comedic and more dramatic, but I feel like it still works because the characters already had such personality. With that said, however, it is when the side characters feel less important. There are exceptions like how Yajirobe helps Goku out countless times during the King Piccolo saga. Some of King Piccolo's minions are pretty memorable, and there are some returning characters during the Piccolo Jr. saga that are welcome to see. but it's clear that the focus is on Goku by the time of the Piccolo Jr. saga. Don't get me wrong, he is the main character, so that's important to get right, but there were characters that I remember, such as General Blue, Husky, Mercenary Tao, Ader, Murasaki, Nam, Ranfan, Emperor Pilaf, and Jiren, not to be confused with Jiren from Dragon Ball Super. Sure, I can think of a ton of memorable side characters in Z, but Dragon Ball's cast had this uniqueness. It wasn't just about Goku, it was about the people he came across. Goku's just the observer who just so happens to develop over the years. It's not necessarily the series' fault for creating less side characters to remember because, well, that's a difficult task to do. I mean, how do you make side characters memorable? You really don't have as much time because they only appear for an episode or two, maybe three if you're lucky. Thus, I do like the first two-thirds of Dragon Ball for different reasons than I do the last third. With that said, I really have to praise this series for even going so many episodes with memorable side characters. If anything, it's pretty refreshing when someone other than Goku does something important. There's even a clever crossover with Toriyama's previous series, Dr. Slump. Yeah, you know the character Arali? She's from Dr. Slump. In fact, there's an episode or two of Dragon Ball Super where she appears and it becomes very self-aware to the point where they completely break the fourth wall. In this show, however, it's not as much meta humor, but that doesn't stop them from sneaking in some meta humor every once in a while. I had no idea this was a crossover with a gag manga that Toriyama worked on. The location they go to is still creative with some random imagery and situations that the original Dr. Slump manga originally had. Speaking of which, the locations in this series are pretty memorable. Whenever you get an image of one of the backgrounds of this show, you'll know it's from Dragon Ball. The setting also cleverly has both a prehistoric and a futuristic setting, with some locations filled with dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers, while others have flying cars, capsules that can be used for storage and even houses, and laboratories, whether for good scientists or evil scientists. It's funny to know that this series has an android character that's really just a one-off character, when this would be a major plot point in Z. In fact, this android, Ader, is seen as a failure in the eyes of his creators only because he refuses to fight. It's Goku who sees the good in him and spares him only for the other androids to appear much later who are considered dangerous, one even planning to destroy the entire planet. Either way, this is a world where anything can happen. Dinosaurs? Completely plausible. A drink that can prevent you from dying of natural causes? Of course that exists. Technology that can track down mythical objects from a great distance? Nothing out of the ordinary there. Anthropomorphic characters as both regular citizens and fighters? All plausible. There's also the soundtrack. The music kinda depends upon which version you watch, but most of it is the same. The only key difference is the opening theme. Funny enough, the first intro I heard for this anime was the BLT dub. It is kind of catchy and it's a pretty exciting intro, but the one I'm used to is the one with the original Dragon Ball theme song, Makafushiji Adventure, easily the superior song. I'm more used to the dubbed version of the song, which some people might not be into, but the Japanese version is just as great. Luckily, the remastered version of Dragon Ball has the full Funimation cast and original soundtrack, with the only alteration being the opening song in English. The rest, however, is filled with the same amazing soundtrack unaltered. It has an instrumental version of Makafushiji Adventure, and it's always awesome to hear whenever something exciting happens. The music is very cheesy and over the top during the action scenes and even some suspenseful moments, but it just sounds great. The softer music works as well, being calmer and even atmospheric. However, you can't deny that some moments earn that over-the-top effect. The music that plays for Shenron's first appearance is earned. It's the first time all the characters are seeing the Eternal Dragon before their very eyes, and there's so much tension because at any moment someone could make a wish to doom the entire planet. The anime also has several in-between songs, so you could consider this a bit of a musical. Overall, this anime soundtrack in general gets my blood pumping. It goes well with so many of these iconic moments, and it often gets me in the nostalgic feels. Next is the animation and art style. It goes without saying that Dragon Ball's entire franchise has a recognizable art style. Whenever I think of anime art styles, this and Z are two of the first that come to mind. Toriyama's design translates so well in animation, and the techniques and imagery are a sight to behold. You want to know who Toriyama's favorite character was? Piccolo. Yes, that's right. Not Gohan, not Vegeta, not even Goku. Piccolo was Toriyama's favorite character. I admit it's not as prominent here as it is in Z, but his design is very iconic. Even King Piccolo looks great. Both are badass designs, with King Piccolo being more over the top, and Piccolo's being more calm and calculated. The monster designs are also pretty great, and if you've ever played Dragon Quest, you'll see these monsters bear a very similar resemblance. I'm always going to be fond of this 80s anime look, where you can get away with a lot of slapstick while also giving gorgeous looking shots. I understand that this old school anime look isn't everyone's thing, and it looks better in Z and even Super, but I kind of miss anime that looks like this. I could go on and on about other elements that make this anime work, but I think it's better for me to talk about it within mini reviews of each saga. First is the Emperor Pilaf saga. This is where they introduce all the major characters of the series: Goku, Bulma, Master Roshi, Emperor Pilaf, Yamcha. All of them get proper introductions, and they all get personalities that are very quick and easy to grasp. It's the closest the anime gets to feeling like an adaptation of Journey to the West, but again, it has enough to make it its own thing. That said, expect a lot of fan service. The first episode has several shots of seeing up Bulma's skirt, and the second episode has that scene I mentioned of Goku taking Bulma's panties off, and he sees what's underneath. And the third episode continues this joke by having Roshi offer Bulma a reward if she shows him her underwear. She does so, and the panties are still off. You can see some glimpses of the partial nudity, so if you're not a fan of this type of comedy, you might want to skim this saga. The comedy is pretty immature, but I give it a pass because this was the 80s. The main villain, Emperor Pilaf, is the first ever antagonist of the Dragon Ball franchise, but don't expect him to be like Frieza because when Pilaf is paired with his two assistants, Shu and Mai, the trio is basically the Team Rocket of the series. They're completely comic relief, and there's nothing intimidating about them whatsoever. The only times Pilaf ever comes close to being intimidating are when he steals the Dragon Balls and summons Shenron so that he can rule the world, even if it does backfire when someone else interrupts, and when he traps Goku and his friends in a glass dome that they can't escape, leaving them no choice but to wait for morning, where the glass will heat them up. The finale is very entertaining as well as insane. I won't give it away, but it gives all the side characters a chance to save the day. Next is the World Martial Arts Tournament saga, where Goku takes up Roshi's offer to train him. He's already learned the Kamehameha wave, but he needs to grow even stronger. However, not only is Roshi a little reluctant at first about training Goku, but a runaway monk named Krillin shows up to learn from Roshi as well. This starts a rivalry between Goku and Krillin, and the first third of this saga is the training they go through. The many creative ways to train them are very fun to watch, and you feel like they have to work extra hard to prepare for this tournament. It's all great. Roshi's teachings all show that he's a well-respected martial arts master, and you believe every lesson he teaches. This also was the introduction of Launch, who would also be a memorable side character, despite her not doing much to serve the plot. It's a shame Toriyama forgot about her because her multiple personality disorder is great, and I personally enjoy her rude rebel side more than her kind caring side. Her bad side is voiced by Meredith McCoy in the Funimation dub, the same voice as Android 18 in Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. Listening to both characters back to back did make me notice similarities in the voices. Then there's the tournament itself. Not only are the fighters memorable, but the announcer is one of my favorite side characters in the show. This man loves his job, and he takes great enthusiasm with every exciting moment. Even when he doesn't know what's going on, he still tries to make sense of it because it's unlike anything he's ever seen in his life. This guy doesn't even need a backstory because you can tell he has all this energy and passion that he puts into something so simple as announcing a tournament. Roshi also enters the tournament disguised as a fighter named Jackie Chan. The explanation of why he does this really gives Goku and Krillin some major development, and when Goku fights the man he doesn't realize is his own master, it's one of the most iconic fights in the entire franchise. Even if this saga has the same comedy as the previous saga, this one is worth it for this fight alone. Other moments are pretty great as well, such as Goku's fight with Nam, Krillin standing up against the monks that made fun of him, and many more. The next saga would be the Red Ribbon Army saga, the first time Dragon Ball used multiple sagas to fulfill a full story arc. Aside from the fact that the Red Ribbon Army seems very similar to another army from our world's history, the army is very intimidating. The leader, Commander Red, is never given a shot of his face for a while, almost like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget or Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar The Last Airbender. Admittedly, this saga doesn't have much of a coherent plot, but it has some truly intense moments. The moment you see some of the soldiers raiding the store lets you know that this saga is going to be a bit darker than the other sagas. I can see how the tone of the first half of this saga could seem out of place, but it shows that these villains are feared by many. Pilaf returns to steal one of the Dragon Balls, only to discover that the Red Ribbon Army wants them as well. It takes Goku a while to meet up with the Colonel, but he beats him very easily. It's a shame because Colonel Silver is a very intimidating villain. That scene I mentioned of the soldiers raiding the store, he's the one who commanded that. With that said, his death is pretty dark. The rest of this saga takes place in a snowy village that's home to one of the army's headquarters, Muscle Tower. The enemies Goku fights here range from decent to memorable. The leader of this town, General White, doesn't really do much, but when Goku fights him, he does some pretty evil stuff. I won't ruin how he's defeated, but it's pretty satisfying. Then the saga ends up with a pretty pointless detour involving Bulma and Yamcha's relationship problems. It's one of the few things I don't like about this show, because I actually did like them as a couple. I do like Goku discovering West City and the Capsule Corporation is a memorable location, and I do like this one-off villain Hasky, but aside from that, this part isn't the best. Next is the General Blue saga, which is either going to be one of your favorite sagas or one of your least favorite sagas. Goku and Bulma find where the next Dragon Ball is located, but they need a submarine. Krillin comes along for the ride, but he and Bulma discover that the Red Ribbon Army is after Goku, which really pisses them off. General Blue follows them, and the heroes all find this labyrinth that leads to a bunch of treasures, including the Dragon Ball. I have no idea how this Dragon Ball even got here. If this place is centuries old, it really shouldn't be able to get through. I know the Dragon Balls are scattered every time someone makes a wish, but how does it go through this maze and find itself perfectly amongst all these other treasures? That's pretty specific, but that's just a nitpick. The first two thirds are about getting this one Dragon Ball. The last few episodes take things to Penguin Village, where, as I said, characters from Dr. Slump show up. General Blue is either going to be really funny to you, or one of the most annoying characters from the Red Ribbon Army. He's really prissy and arrogant, and in the original Japanese version, they reveal he's gay. They do hint at this in the Funimation dub, but other versions make it more clear. With that said, I still find this character memorable because he is more than just, that. He has psychic powers that he can use to freeze people, which is something the series never did before, aside maybe every once in a while. At the very least, this saga's pretty short compared to the previous one, seeing how there's only one villain as the focus. It gets pretty fun with both its comedy and its fights, so I guess this one just depends upon your comedic taste. Next is the Commander Red saga. The name of this one honestly confuses me because Commander Red is only in about a third of this saga. This should have been called the Mercenary Tao Saga because that's who Goku is trying to defeat for most of this saga. He starts as the main threat and even Goku can't defeat him. Goku doesn't even see Commander Red at all. One of my favorite moments is when Mercenary Tao just kills someone with his tongue. This death is both funny and also pretty dark. Either way, we can see that Goku's finally met his match, as Tao is killing anyone who stands in his way. Luckily, Goku just barely survives, but he feels like it was just luck. Thus, he makes his way up Korin's tower, hearing about a sacred water that could help him become stronger. We get yet another training arc with Goku, which could have made things feel not as fresh, but Korin is a very memorable character, and the twist about the water is something I never would have expected. This saga also has probably one of the darkest moments I've ever seen in any anime, where Goku looks into a jar of water, which shows him the future. Now, that doesn't sound dark at first, but the atmosphere is just eerie and unsettling. When Goku finally gets stronger, Tao's defeat is just so satisfying to watch. Finally, we see Goku raiding Commander Red's headquarters. This is where we see Commander Red's assistant, Officer Black, slowly becoming more and more frustrated by how he's being treated. All of this builds and builds until finally it gets to the shocking payoff. We also get to see the true reason why Commander Red wanted the Dragon Balls, and without giving anything away, it's a pretty ballsy move. We see everyone in the Red Ribbon Army either defeated by Goku or fleeing the scene. The scene where everyone checks to see if the headquarters are completely empty is both haunting and satisfying. However, the saga ends with Goku realizing he has one more Dragon Ball, but the radar can't find it. This transitions to the next saga, the Fortune Teller Baba saga, where Roshi suggests her help because she has the power to find any lost items. However, Baba's price is way too high to pay. She says she'll show Goku and the others see where it is only if they defeat her 5 fighters. Weirdly enough, this saga still keeps going even after the final fighter and the last Dragon Ball is obtained. The rest is just Goku wandering the vast lands to seek further adventures and train himself for once until the next World Martial Arts Tournament. So it's pretty weird that they'd call this the Fortune Teller Baba saga. But when it gives us Baba and her fighters, it's pretty fun to watch. At first, they find creative ways of fighting Baba's warriors, but the last three are just defeated by Goku. I won't give away who the last fighter is, but it's a very heartwarming moment in the series. What I can discuss, however, is the fourth fighter, known as the Devil Man. He has a technique called the Devil Might Beam, which takes all the darkness within the opponent's heart, and even just the smallest bit will cause it to become an explosion that kills the opponent from the inside. This just makes me wonder if this works on other characters from the Dragon Ball franchise. One of the video games even had a clever what if episode where this beam was used on Frieza and his army, and it actually worked. It's a shame this didn't go on for very long, but it's an interesting concept. The last few episodes can be seen as filler, but it gives an anime exclusive introduction to Tien and Chiaotzu. I can see why someone would see this part as pointless, but it does show just how terrible Tien started out. He's a real bastard, and even though I hate the good guy looking bad and good guy looking good trope I brought up last week, I admit it's not that bad here, and it shows Goku isn't afraid to stand up to bad people, even if he's going to become wrongly accused of being a bad guy. However, Tien's real introduction started with the next saga. The Tien Shinhan saga became the start to a more serious take on Dragon Ball, with less comedy. There are still comedic moments, but the focus of this saga became purely character development and drama. Goku, Krillin, and Yamcha sign up for the next World Martial Arts tournament, while Roshi disguises himself as Jackie Chun once again. This time, however, we see Roshi's rival, the Crane Hermit, Master Shen. With him are his most powerful students, Tien and Chiaotzu. In the manga, this is the first time Goku's seen them, but in the anime, he wants to get back at them for terrorizing villages. Roshi also starts to realize that Goku not only is becoming more and more powerful, but also his other disciples as well as Tien, which leads to a decision that I won't give away. The true villain of this saga is indeed Shen. He's a ruthless bastard who doesn't participate in any fights, but he's manipulative towards his students, and you see his strict discipline whenever one of his students loses. The fights are once again fun to watch. Tien fights both Yamcha and Roshi, and they show how relentlessly cruel Tien is. Krillin fights Chiaotzu and eventually Goku. Yes, Goku versus Krillin, a fight we always wanted to see since their rivalry started. Sure, they had kind of a fight in the beginning, but it was so short that it's barely worth discussing. This fight really showcases how much more powerful Goku is than Krillin, and how neither one is holding back even if they're both best friends. There's also a really funny segment where one of the fighters is a big celebrity with an agent who tries to get Goku disqualified from his match just for his reputation. Then you have Goku's fight with Tien, which not only looks great, but also the development is spot on. Their fight shifts from revenge to just a heated spar. Shen is such an asshole during this fight, and he gets his comeuppance in the most satisfying way. This is a great saga, and it probably has the most haunting cliffhanger to any Dragon Ball saga. After the tournament, Goku says he didn't bring his power pole, so Krillin tries to get it back at the tournament. However, what Goku sees completely shocks him after Krillin's been gone for such a while. All he's told is that a monster stole a list of the tournament's roster as well as Goku's Dragon Ball. Who could have done this? Well, you'd have to find out in the next episode. The King Piccolo saga marks the final story arc of the original Dragon Ball, and this saga just so happens to be the darkest. The first few episodes are absolutely chilling. We already see what one of these monsters is capable of, leading to Goku's rage building and building, but it turns out that this was some lackey for an even bigger threat. It left behind a calling card, a sign that only Roshi recognizes. Once he sees this sign, He feels absolute fear and terror that he hasn't experienced for a long time. This, of course, is the mark of the Demon King Piccolo, who once terrorized the planet with his demon army. Roshi's master had sealed King Piccolo away, but Pilaf had foolishly released him from his prison. King Piccolo has become too old and is near his death, but he's still capable of causing all hell to break loose. The lackey who Goku is after is Tambourine, a winged demon who assassinates countless innocent lives. The moments of him killing these people are very intense, and the idea that he's nothing compared to King Piccolo is absolutely terrifying. Roshi and the others think they can use the Dragon Balls to wish him away, but that backfires and King Piccolo gains eternal youth, making him an unstoppable force that Goku can't defeat. This is also when Tien learns the error of his ways and plans to make up for all the terrible things he's done by training himself to get rid of King Piccolo himself. On top of returning characters and the villains, we get a new character, Yajirobe. Everyone says this character is one of the most, if not the most useless character in the franchise. But from this saga alone, he saves Goku on multiple occasions. The tone of this saga is much darker, and King Piccolo is an absolute monster. He's so over the top, but he's still very intimidating. Chris Sabat's voice acting makes his performance so enjoyable. If there's one problem I have with this saga, it's that there's a bit of a deus ex machina that Goku uses in order to become stronger. It feels like they ran out of ideas on how to make him stronger, but it feels pretty out of place here. Aside from that, however, it's a great saga. Goku's final battle against King Piccolo is amazing, and King Piccolo's death is one of the most iconic moments in the entire Dragon Ball franchise. With that said, this wasn't the end because King Piccolo spits out one last egg before he finally dies, stating that his son will take over. At last, we get to the final saga of Dragon Ball, the Piccolo Jr. saga. This one starts out with quite a bit of filler, but it ultimately leads to the World Martial Arts Tournament where everyone is all grown up. Goku finds the creator of the Dragon Balls, Kami, but he isn't allowed to see him at first because of his assistant, Mr. Popo. Goku allows Mr. Popo to train him in exchange for the Dragon Balls to be restored after King Piccolo's actions. Thus, everyone killed by King Piccolo and his minions is revived, but Goku is told that King Piccolo's son, Piccolo Jr., will be much more powerful than King Piccolo. A few years later, we finally see Goku all grown up. In the dub, he's given the same voice as he had in Z, GT, and Super, Sean Schemmel. His voice is the definitive Goku voice. He has this likable energy to him, and his voice is always pleasant to hear. Grown-up Krillin would also be voiced by Sonny Strait, who also was in the dub for Z, GT, and Super. I actually like this voice a lot more than the voice Krillin had in earlier episodes, because despite the fact that he doesn't do much to serve the plots in this saga or even here on out until maybe Super, he's still a likable character. Piccolo finally shows up, but only Goku and Tien recognize him. I have no idea why he attends this tournament unless maybe because he knows Goku will be there, but either way, it seems like he's here to show the world that he's the revived King Piccolo and that no one is safe from his fury. Sadly, this marks the point where Dragon Ball as a franchise didn't have as many unique side characters. With that said, this has some iconic moments. The early training with Mr. Popo is pretty great. Tien finally confronts his past to finally put an end to his story arc and send Shen off once and for all. Goku gets a rematch against Tien, Goku proposes to Chi-Chi, and Yamcha has this pretty cool technique called the Spirit Ball, not to be confused with the Spirit Bomb. But my biggest problem might be that it doesn't feel as grand as the King Piccolo saga. They try to make Piccolo as sinister and diabolical as King Piccolo, but it doesn't work. Maybe it's because I'm so used to Piccolo being an anti-hero, but I don't buy him as an evil king. Goku's fight with Piccolo is good, but it does drag a bit sometimes. My original problem with this saga was that there wasn't as much comedy as before, but now it's just the fact that it's not as impressive a finale as the previous saga for such an epic anime. Also, if you watch the anime, Piccolo's defeat is not the end of the saga. Canonically, it does end with Piccolo's defeat, with Goku sparing his life, knowing that Piccolo's death would result in Kami's death, and Goku and Chi-Chi fly off to get married. Like I said though, we get more filler episodes. I let these slide because this might be the only time I found Chi-Chi a likable character. It's a shame that Z made her constantly bitchy and annoying, but it's nice to see her so relaxed and even sweet to Goku. Overall, it's my least favorite saga of this anime, but that's some stiff competition. Every saga is still great in my opinion, and it shows that no matter what, this anime brings me joy. Even when Toriyama continued the adventures of Goku and his friends, he still couldn't recapture the magic of his original masterpiece, in my opinion. I understand those who prefer Z due to it being more focused on plot and action rather than comedy and fan service, but I still want to recommend this to anyone who wants to get into the Dragon Ball franchise. Sure, it's got some filler here and there, but I don't mind the filler because I just love these characters too much. You could literally show me all these characters in a slice of life anime, and I wouldn't mind. I don't just suggest this anime because of how it tells the characters as introductions. I suggest it because it has some iconic moments in terms of action, drama, and comedy. Whether it's a fight scene, a training method, a revealed attack, a piece of imagery, a comedic scene, or just a really entertaining scene in general, I always have a reason to rewatch this anime. It's over 150 episodes, but it doesn't feel like it to me. So many of these episodes go by so fast that I'm shocked when an episode ends upon rewatch. Dragon Ball Z would follow up on Dragon Ball's ending with new characters, stories, and iconic moments, while GT would attempt to follow up without Toriyama being involved, and Super would be the definitive follow up to Z. Overall, I love this anime. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, especially with the comedy, but I'm very nostalgic for it. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10, even if in reality this would probably be closer to an 8 out of 10. It has some amazing moments, but I acknowledge some moments might be a turnoff. Either way, thanks for watching. Till then, everyone.